Good morning to you. It's Daybreak at iFiber One News Radio. I'm Jeff Slakey. On a Monday morning, we heard late last week that one of the major three credit reporting bureaus had been experiencing a data breach. Earlier in the summer, it was Equifax, and a potential of 143 million Americans could be impacted by this. That's about half of America. Peninsula Credit Union's Kirk Smith is on with me this morning to talk a little bit more about this. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thanks for coming on. Timely information to pass along. A scary thing, I'm sure, as people woke up to the headlines that a lot of these companies, you would hope, especially with the amount of information they have, not only on you as a single individual, but just all of America, could be a lot safer. Anytime you get a cell phone, you get a fridge, you get a car, they run these credit checks. Equifax is one of these big three.
Absolutely. It's one of the three major companies. They have all of this information on you, and this is going to be a big deal. And that's why we thought, hey, let's get out here. Let's share a little bit of information about what us, the average consumer can do to kind of protect ourselves. Because I think in this economy, in this world that we live in today, we're our biggest advocate, right? Sure. We need to kind of stick up for what we can do.
So give me some background, if you have it, on what they think may have happened, how they got in, perhaps, and what will be the first sort of things an individual will see if there's maybe a breach.
Good question. So a little bit of history for those. It's been everywhere, but in case you haven't heard or don't have all of the statistics, September 7th, it was discovered. Equifax announced via a press release that their information had been hacked, if you will. 143 million people, like you said, and they have a lot of information. They think that the unauthorized access or the hacking started mid-May and went through July.
Wow.
So these guys had a long time to collect data and do their thing. Types of information that they have grabbed are names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and in some cases, driver's license numbers.
Wow.
So, I mean, literally everything that they would need, these bad guys would need to pretend that they were you, right? So it's unlike previous breaches that have happened in years past, major breaches, most of the information were credit cards, right? So you could go to your bank or credit union, ask them for a new card, they'd reissue one, and you were essentially protected. Unlike that, this time it's socials, names, addresses, driver's license numbers. Those numbers are never going to get changed.
Sure. That's
just what they are. So this is the start of a new age, if you will. This is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. We need to remain vigilant.
It has happened more and more over the last few years, and we have not necessarily heard the response from Congress during a Home Depot breach, perhaps. And these are just names that I'm remembering.
Yeah.
I'm not singling anybody out here, but these are names that I've remembered, breaches like that. This, though, on the other hand, it seems like Congress, the United States Congress, and all levels there, they say, well, I'm probably one of these folks too. Maybe we should start looking into this and hopefully ushering in a new era of super cyber security.
Yeah.
How are they? So if someone gets into a file, it says the file name is jeffslakey.doc. It's a Word document or something.
Yeah.
Does it? And it just has the list of all my pertinent information, or, I would think that it would kind of maybe your address is at one level, then there's a firewall perhaps, and then then the mother's maiden name, and then another firewall, but that doesn't sound like that's the case.
And I don't know how the files are created, but I mean, they had 2 months of good time to get in there and kind of get whatever they wanted without being discovered. So even if there were levels of, which I can't speak to, I don't know,
Sure.
but it just sounds like they had all the time in the world that they could be methodical and take what they needed.
What would you see? What's likely that someone will see to kind of trigger an idea that maybe they've been compromised?
So, and perfect segue, I got a couple tips of what we could do, right? So the first thing that I recommend that everybody does, go to annualcreditreport.com. several years ago, legislation passed that every consumer in the United States should have access to their credit report, and this is where you would go to access that. So annualcreditreport.com. You can do that once a year. So if you do it today, you could do it again next September 11th, right? Another thing that is being recommended is doing a credit freeze. Now, what that is it temporarily freezes your credit report. However, if you were going to go to buy something new and they needed to check your credit, it would not work. So you would have to call all three credit agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, unfreeze that credit. They actually call it thawing your credit. They would pull it, and then you would call them back and put on the freeze again. Now, currently, you have to pay when you thaw, and you have to pay when you freeze. So there's a nominal fee, and you'd have to contact those businesses to find out how much that is with each of them, etc. But that is something, no unauthorized access could happen while your credit is frozen. So that is something that I personally am going to do in the near future. You can also put on an extended fraud alert. What this does is puts a warning on your account. It also removes you from pre-qualified lists of anybody that might get your information. So you'll notice that you get less of those while this is on there as well. Again, you pay for it, a nominal fee. It's not much. But it would be on there, and it just is an extra warning for anybody pulling your credit that please make sure that the person that's in front of you is in fact the person that you think it is, etc. So that is something that you could do. Another key thing is just monitor your accounts. Now, we always monitor the ones we use on a regular basis, but I think almost everybody has an account out there that it's out there, but you haven't used it and you haven't checked it for a long time. Those are the ones that you're really going to want to keep an eye on, right? Okay. Start opening those statements again. When they come, even if you don't have a balance on that card or whatever that might be, open those back up, because those are going to be crucial in this time. If people can find out that you're not monitoring it, that's where they're really going to take advantage of you. And then the last recommended tip, I should say, file your taxes early this next year, because they've got all the information that they need to file your taxes. So make sure that you file early, right when you get your W-2s. Do that as quickly as possible so that there's not tax fraud on the back end.
When you go to that annualcreditreport.com, and I've done that in the past as well, you see the numbers from the three main.
Yes. Yep.
If you are breached from Equifax, would those numbers show different? Because I know the credit scores are relatively the same, although not the same for each person. But if you were to see a 600, a 600, and an 800, or an 800, an 800, and a 400, would that be a tell that maybe something happened?
It could, but more likely what you're going to see is all of them are going to drastically drop. So if you find yourself you're at a 800, which is extremely high, so you should be proud of yourself. But if you have 800 normally, and in the next 6 months you drop down to a 500 or somewhere in that area, that's going to be your bigger tell. Okay. It's not necessarily that one is going to be an outlier. It just depends on what company they're reporting to. So, for example, some companies don't report to all three credit bureaus. When you get a mortgage, they do, right? But if you get just a simple car loan someplace, generally they're not reporting to all three. Your credit report that follows you, it will reflect in all three of those scores. So, but they're not telling all three. So it's gonna basically keep the same kind of range of scores for all three of those zones.
You can comment on this if you know or don't know or not feel comfortable, but how on earth did these three companies, how were they able to get so much information on Americans?
Everything we do anymore is electronic money, right? So it's filing credit. Every time that any business wants to do anything with you, right? We ask, what's your social? And that's not just banks and credit unions. That's getting a cell phone, as you mentioned, or getting a department store card, or everything we do is tied to that social. And so just over the usage of time, they've collected all of this information, because anytime you give that number out, those companies are reporting back. And that's just more and more information that they've amassed over time.
Wow.
And it was a vulnerable point, and I'm sure that they did everything they possibly could to mitigate any risk digitally, that type of thing. But somehow this group of hackers breached their security, and now, like you said, 1 in 2 Americans are at risk of their information being out there.
Scary stuff. Is there other things that Peninsula Credit Union is specifically doing to help its members?
Yeah, so we're going to closely monitor this as well. And if you feel concerned, go into your local branch, call us 800-426-1601 and ask. We can look at your account specifically with you. One thing that I will talk about, we've talked about before, PCU Perks powered by Bazing. It's the local deals that you can get in local shops and discounts and stuff. One of the ancillary kind of benefits of this product is ID theft aid. And what that does is it protects you against identity theft. It protects you. There's resources, right? That if you feel like you've been a victim, if you're reviewing your credit report on annualcreditreport.com, see an anomaly or something that shouldn't be there, you can call us, of course. But if you have PCU Perks, we give you a whole other resource of people and a company that will work with you to help get that cleaned up. That's what they do.
Very nice.
And that's in our premium package. It's only $5 a month, but $60 a year, really, when you think about it, to protect your identity. I think it's an investment well spent.
And this annualcreditreport.com is the government-backed one. There are other ones out there, but this annualcreditreport.com is the one that you are given access to yearly.
Yes, and it will be completely free. Like you mentioned, there are other companies out there that have jingles and all sorts of stuff. They make their money somehow, and that they're bad. But yes, annualcreditreport.com is where that free resource where every consumer can check their credit report once a year.
Kirk Smith from Peninsula Credit Union, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.